Hey everyone, you got the Hobby Drifter here. As I speak, it is May 30th, 2020, in beautiful Tokyo City, Japan. What you got in front of me is my most recent Transformers figure pickup. It's the Masterpiece Megatron from the Transformers Masterpiece movie line. It was released either earlier this year or late last year, and it is beautiful, but also way, way bigger than I was expecting. Now, usually my Transformer collecting is limited to Autobot leaders because space is limited here in my little place. But I have been kind of branching out lately and getting the companion piece to whichever Optimus Prime figure comes out. So I'll get the Optimus and the Megatron. And the reason that I grabbed this guy was that he was incredibly cheap on Amazon Japan. There's a seller called Toy Cell Town who I've done a bunch of business with in the past, and they're always really, really great to deal with. They had this guy for 67% off, so just over 6,000 yen, which is 50 something dollars, maybe just around 60 bucks, which is absolutely fantastic considering this thing had an MSRP of about 22,000 yen, which is over 200 US dollars. Going by the box, it looks like it's exactly the same as the Hasbro version. Though if you get one of those more hardcore collectors, like the guy from Collecticon, could probably tell you what little minor differences are from the different factories. But as I mentioned, Megatron here is a lot bigger than I was expecting him to be, and that got me thinking about something else that was a lot bigger than anyone really expected, and that was the 2007 Transformers movie. Um, that movie, whether you love it, hate it, don't care, changed a lot of things. Okay, um, and I figured, this is the first time I've ever owned both an Optimus and a Megatron from the movie line, and I figured, to like 07 episodes, I just wanted to get it out there. So I've been an active Transformers fan collector since around the second season of Beast Wars, and I've been active in the online community for around the same amount of time. And it was nice. It was a nice, tight knit community. Kind of clicky. The different message boards had like different cliques and whatever. But the overall adult Transformers hobby wasn't huge. Thing I always go back to is at the time getting like a complete Fortress Maximus would have run about $500, and 500% of what the original MSRP was. And now you get you get figures, especially like third party stuff, where that's like the starting MSRP is that's like the cost of admission to some new figures. They're nice, but yeah, there's this really clear line pre-movie and post-movie. Pre-movie, Transformers was fairly small. The toy line had something like 300 figures in it. Across several years of G1, the Beast Wars and especially Beast Machines lines were a lot smaller than maybe a lot of people remember, and the Armada trilogy, the Unicron trilogy, also fairly small. I mean, there's for Beast Wars there wasn't even any comics, so the overall like what Transformers was fairly manageable. Prior to the announcement of the live action movie, we were in the middle of Armada, I believe it was, where there was the TV show that was unfortunately got a pretty poor localization into English. The Japanese version is fun, but so you had the TV show, very basic toy line, and a comic book series from Dreamwave. As far as nostalgia stuff went, you had the occasional G1 reissue, mostly coming out of Japan, along with another bunch of comic book series, again from Dreamwave, which, as many of you know, never really reached a conclusion due to the principal owners of Dreamwave just absolutely salting the earth behind them and running away. And then you had the occasional little thing like the SCF figures from here in Japan, and I mean it was manageable. You could, if you had any kind of disposable income, keeping up with new Transformers was fairly simple and doable. Then came the 2007 movie, which was a lot bigger than anyone really expected. And for me, this was around the time that I had moved to Japan. I was 23, 24 years old, living in a new country, new city, new place, learning a new language. Everything was bright and interesting and colorful and new. And my favorite pastime was getting a big Hollywood movie. And no one really knew what to think, because at first it was just, Paramount is going to make a movie. And I remember online people were thinking, is this going to be like an action movie? Is this going to be a kids movie? Is it like what is this going to be? And the conflicting reports came out. It's kind of both. It's going to be a story of a young boy in his first car, and complaining and moaning, we don't want that. But then it was like, Steven Spielberg is attached to be one of the executive producers, and it's going to be directed by Michael Bay. And Michael Bay was not a kids movie director. I think most of his stuff was R-rated. He did Bad Boys 1 and 2, and things like that. So we're thinking, okay, so he's going to make like an action movie. It's going to be a Transformers action movie. This is going to be, interesting. Then we saw the designs of some of the characters, and I remember the internet backlash at the time was pretty severe. The thing that I heard a lot of on different message boards was that they're not giving the fans what they want. This movie is going to be a major failure because they're not giving us what we want. They're not giving the fans, their due. And I recall, agreeing with that was that they weren't aiming specifically at Transformers fans. And then it got me thinking that who were they aiming this movie at? Because if they weren't aiming it at the teenagers and older, or the fans who remembered the original G1 characters, and they weren't aiming it at kids because it had nothing to do with Beast Wars or Armada or anything like that. And who was this aimed at? And I started kind of doing some math, which is not fun for me. Thinking it's like, okay, the comics sell 50 to 80,000 issues, but each of those books has at least 2 covers. Most fans are buying both covers. Some people are buying every cover, like the incentives and stuff like that. So the number of adult fans who are invested in the current G1 fiction, probably not huge. Toy sales figures have always been pretty hard to come by, so there's really no way to tell that. And the ratings for the cartoon show aren't really setting the world on fire. So I got to thinking that if they weren't planning on making this movie for the existing Transformers fans, then this would just absolutely tank. Because if every single quote-unquote real Transformers fan went and bought a ticket to this movie 2 or 3 times, it would still make no money. Especially when you consider that the budget was something like $80 million. So the answer to who they made this movie for, and I think it's absolutely brilliant, was they made it for people you think about it now, that's what Marvel Studios and them are doing with the MCU, and it's working out great. They can change whatever they want just as long as they deliver a good movie. That's what they did. They had this idea. How can we make a good movie? With this as kind of like the backdrop. Like, how can we make an interesting movie with giant space alien robots? I mean, seems pretty much like a no-brainer, and would have been, except if they had stuck slavishly to the existing Transformers lore, then they would be shackled from the get-go. And supposedly, they were originally talking about, oh, well, maybe we'll make the Transformers human creations, like they escape from a lab or something. And Hasbro kind of went, no, we're going to just do the alien robots from another planet. So, very minimal things. But they did, they threw fans a couple of bones, right? This looks like Optimus Prime, right? I mean, you wouldn't look at that and say, what is that? Red and blue robot with faceplate, bunny ears. That's Optimus Prime. Look at that. That is Optimus Prime. Megatron, not so much. I think I've heard someone refer to the Decepticon character designs as humanoid bugs made of metal swords. Fair. Looks pretty cool though, right? And that looks neat. And that's when I didn't realize this until later, was that they had set out to, they had a vision. They had something that they wanted to do. They had a story they wanted to tell. They had an aesthetic they wanted to put out there. And they did that instead of trying to cater to a small pre-existing audience. And it worked really well. As I mentioned before, pre-movie, the Transformers hobby was fairly small. To give you some idea, when I was in college, I bought the entire Transformers comic book series, the 80 issues of G1 plus the Headmasters and the Universe profile book, the US versions, for about $40 on eBay, which was a fantastic deal at the time. I mean, that wasn't something you just found on all of whenever, but I mean, that's kind of like, okay, with one purchase, I have all the US comics. It's done. And it was great reading for a couple of months, and then it was kind of underwhelmed because, okay, well, that part of collecting was over for me from then on. Then in the run-up to the movie, we got stuff like the Transformers Classics figures, the original line of 6, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, Starscream, Astro Train, and Hot Rod / Rhodes. And Megatron was a gun. Optimus was a truck. The Bumblebee figure turned into not a Beetle, but it was a cute little car. And that was for the fans. And we just kept getting more and more of that after the movie came out and was a success. And I think one of the things that really made the movie a success was, and again, I know this has kind of been colored by 13 years that have happened since, and the subsequent movies and all the other stuff. But that first movie was a lot better than anyone was expecting, wasn't it? It was not what I was expecting, which is, again, kind of strange because the entire script leaked about a year before the movie came out. And with very few exceptions, that leaked script was accurate. I mean, the only thing I can really think of that was in the leaked script that wasn't in the final movie was that originally the Autobots speak Chinese to Sam because that was the first language they learned, because that's what they got from the internet. But I mean, fans who got that script, they weren't very hopeful. The script made it sound like Megatron and Optimus Prime were actual brothers, as opposed to like brothers in arms or whatever. Um, and of course, the studio denied that it was real. They said it was a total fabrication. Um, and that's something else. I've been working on Transformers websites for years and years and years, and generally, no matter how badly a scoop went, we didn't hear a whole lot of feedback from the people involved. Maybe every now and then, if you leaked the BotCon figure, or if you posted something that could be a spoiler from the comics, you might hear from angry fans. With this movie, I remember hearing from the guy who was running the website that he got an angry phone call from Lorenzo de Bonaventura, the producer, one of the producers of the movie, about one of the articles that he wrote, which was just weird. You never really heard from people in charge until then, and that was all kinds of strange. But once the movie came out, it did really, really well, and that is because that first movie was, with a few little quibbles, a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't what I think anybody was expecting from a live-action Transformers movie, and the Transformers weren't really. I mean, they were they were the driving force behind the movie, but they weren't necessarily like the main cast. And what saved that was that the main cast was a lot of fun. Sam Witwicky, based on Spike Witwicky. Weird that they jettisoned so much of the original G1 continuity, but they kept the name Witwicky in there. That would have been, super easy to change. But I mean, Sam was great. He wasn't like the muscular, jock guy. He wasn't cool, but he also wasn't like a hopeless nerd. He was, a teenager. He had plans. He had ambition. He worked to make stuff happen. But when stuff went wrong, he acted, like a teenager, like he doesn't really know any better. The scene where he's like running away, or like he's on his it's like his sister's bike, chasing down the what he thinks is the stolen car while on the phone with the cops, and they think he's on drugs. It was funny. It did not take itself too seriously, but it also didn't devolve into parody. Then you had Michaela, who you would kind of think would be the character who would started off as like a really snobbish, stuck-up type character who learned that it doesn't matter if the guy doesn't have big muscle. But no, I mean she started off the movie dating a jock asshole, and as soon as he got sideways with her for like a second, she's like, okay, yeah, bye, don't call me. I mean, she never treated Sam with anything less than human dignity. She was like, hey, don't we have a class together? Thanks for the ride, whatever. The parents were, fun. The stuff with Sam and his mom and dad, the blown transformer, and happy time, and it's like, oh, who's this girl in your room? They got huge laughs in the theaters whenever. Wherever I saw the movie, that got some big laughs. Then of course there's Simmons, John Turturro's character. Weird that he doesn't really show up in the movie until like the last 40 minutes, but that is one problem that the movie has, is they just keep introducing more and more characters as the movie goes on. But I mean, it was a fun movie. I think most people left that movie thinking, that was fun. I don't know of any of my personal friends who just hated the Transformers movie, the first one anyway. I know online reaction was kind of mixed, and still remains that way. But non-fans, oh man, non-fans seem to love that. That was just like the best surprise for me that they. It seemed like a lot of people went to see it, seeing the commercials, thinking, okay, movie based on Transformers. That's, I mean, it looks, the trailers were very explodey. The trailers were very, Michael Bay. But, I mean, I don't know of a whole lot of non-fans who watched that first movie and hated that. I mean, it made like $800 million, and the next two sequels made over $1 billion each. And that's where I say that the Transformers movie, the 2007 one, changed everything, because this, to me, unexpected major hit, had a lot of effects on the hobby of Transformers fandom in general. The number of toys, of course, to collect skyrocketed. There were multiple versions of all the movie characters, plus the Transformers Classic line was continued. There were more reissues. The alternators and Vinyltech line kind of came and went. IDW got the license for the Transformers and started churning out really good stories. They got Simon Furman back to put his spin on starting the new universe. They brought in guys like James Roberts to take the franchise places that I don't think anyone really anticipated, but a lot of people really loved. I thought that James Roberts' time on the Transformers comics was unparalleled, just some of the best comics I've read in 20 or 30 years. You got the Masterpiece line, now you have Siege, and the War for Cybertron trilogy. There's that HasLab Unicron. Comics and games and books and everything's on DVD and Blu-ray, including the Japanese series are now available to watch with English subtitles. And that's fantastic. Even if you're a Transformers fan and you hate the movies, the stuff that you do like about Transformers is there in abundance now, and it's probably not going away anytime soon. Transformers started out as a children's toy line, big for a couple of years, and then kind of faded into the background. But now it's like this huge global juggernaut. I mentioned before, when I first came to Japan, I could buy old Transformers stuff for pennies. But now, that it's become big, obviously everything's a hot item, which kind of sucks for me, but it's good for the franchise in general that it's popular like that. And it all comes down to the original 2007 movie. Anything else about Stan Bush came back and wrote 2 new Transformers songs. The Linkin Park inspired version of The Touch, and then the song Till All Are One, which I still listen to regularly. I think it's a fantastic track. Also his new track, the 80s, just wonderful. If you like 80s music at all, you owe it to yourself to listen to this. So yeah, that's about all I got in my little deep dive memory lane for the 2007 Transformers movie. These are right now they're on the box that Amazon shipped Megatron to me in, but they are going to get a nice place of honor on one of my shelves in the not too distant future, and I'm looking forward to remembering this interesting time in my life as a Transformers fan. Every time I look at them. That's going to be all from me. Thank you very much for joining me. If you have any comments or interesting Transformers memories from around this time, please share them in the comments. I love to hear from other fans. But until next time, thank you very much, and happy hobbying.